Technology isn't just a part of our everyday lives anymore. It's become a frontier for global powers, with India right in the mix. So why not join the conversation? Take the Technopolitik Survey, created by researchers at the Takshashila Institution. It's just 10 simple questions, but your answers could help shape India's strategy in navigating the fast changing world of high tech geopolitics. Your voice matters, so let's make it heard. The link is in the bio.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I'm your host, Rakshit, a research analyst at Takshashila Institution. And joining us today is my colleague, Ashwin Prasad, who's a fellow research analyst working with the High-Tech Geopolitics program. Ashwin tracks India's space program and other space stuff. So we'll be talking a lot about satellite internet technology, what's happening in India, and what are the security concerns. So let's jump in, right? Recent events in India highlight the growing prevalence of satellite-based internet technologies. In the northeast state of Manipur, Indian security forces recovered Starlink dish and a router with weapons during a raid. Now, this is not an isolated occurrence. Another Starlink device was recently found in a drug bust-off near the Andaman coast. Authorities suspect that these devices were smuggled in from Myanmar, where Starlink is reportedly active despite lacking regulatory approval. And a lot of insurgents in Manipur have claimed that they have been using this device to circumvent India's ban on internet technologies, which has flared up violence. Now, this is a serious issue, and Ashwin will help us track down, what was happening in this area. And Ashwin, let's just jump in. And can you explain, let's give the primer background to our listeners. And can you explain how satellite internet technology differs from traditional internet technologies, such as fiber optics and mobile networks?
Hey, Rakshit, thanks for having me. Yes, so satellite internet is a great alternative to the terrestrial internet that we are all used to. The way terrestrial internet works is that you have, at least on our phones, we have a lot of these mobile towers that we see around us, and they transmit their network to a defined area around them, and everyone in that area can and will use the signals to communicate on the internet. And then all of these towers are themselves connected with fiber optic cables. And so we are all part of the whole internet, the global internet network. And then that they finally lead to submarine cables and all of that. So the thing with these traditional terrestrial internet infrastructure is that it's a great business model in densely populated areas. The minute you step out and you are trying to provide this infrastructure in hilly regions or in sparsely populated areas, which are the ones that need the most security, coincidentally, our border regions, there, it's hard to make this work because one, setting up this infrastructure is extremely tricky. There is access of roads, and all of these are question marks, and these traditionally have lower ranges. So you putting up a lot of towers to cover the whole region is always a challenge. Satellite internet is a great alternative here. While the terrestrial network infrastructure works better in cities and densely populated areas, and it's also cheaper, satellite internet is great for all the other areas. So these satellites beam internet from the low Earth orbit usually, and they reach a much wider region. Each satellite can reach around 500 kilometers of area on the surface of the Earth, and so they are great for covering sparse populations and other places where terrestrial networks are simply impractical. And because of easier launch services and advancements in antenna technology and just the crazy demand for internet in the recent years, that now that we have the boom of the smartphones and so much of the world economy runs on the internet, the demand for internet has surged. And because of this, satellite internet is a very viable business model now. And though they cost more than traditional internet, people are willing to pay because the use of the internet is that important in our daily lives today. And so this is like a really emergent technology that the world is seeing more and more of, and it's already reached the mainstream.
Right. Thanks for that, Ashwin. And I specifically want to know what are the security implications of this, right? And we have seen Starlink providing services to Ukraine during the entire war when their domestic telecommunications were disrupted. Starlink provided the services, and it played a huge role in the entire logistics and communications during the war, right? How does Starlink's satellite internet service operate specifically, and what opportunities do you see for India in adopting foreign satellite internet technologies?
Yeah, Starlink is like it's the poster boy for what this kind of technology can do. So Starlink is easily the largest satellite internet provider in the world today. They have over 6,800 satellites in the lower Earth orbit, and they're operational in more than 100 countries. They have over 4 million subscribers already. And so the utility of these satellite internet applications is that they are great for civilian and military applications alike. So Russia-Ukraine war is been a crazy demonstration of what these technologies can do. I believe that early during the war, Russia took out Ukraine's communication infrastructure as a way to cripple their coordination and defense. And I remember seeing a tweet by the defense minister of Ukraine. He appealed for Starlink services to be enabled over the country. And you can still go back and see this thread on Twitter. In a matter of 12 hours, Musk had confirmed that Starlink is going to become operational over Ukraine. A lot of Starlink kits were shipped from the US to Ukraine immediately, and the existing kits in Ukraine were already using Starlink. In a matter of 12 hours, satellite internet was up and running in Ukraine. And this was transformative for their, counter defense efforts, because these internet technologies are fast. They can get up to 500 Mbps in most cases, and it varies, but the speeds are excellent. And with this kind of latency and bandwidth, the entire defense effort was supported on the backbone of this satellite internet infrastructure. And the speeds were so high that there have been reports that on the border, in their efforts to push back, the Ukrainian troops used drones, and their footage was exchanged between all the other drone operators, so they could see what all the others could see at the same time. They had this kind of real-time information, and all of it was happening through these satellites. So as you can see, this has tremendous applications for even the Indian security forces in the border if we use it. And because our world and our technologies and the way we operate is so tied into internet usage, this is always going to be is going to have a more applications compared to some other, maybe say radio communications or audio only communications or something like that. And so the security implications of this are the possibilities are tremendous, and that's going to only improve as the technology matures.
Right. Ashwin, let's come back to our domestic operators, right? I mean, we have like two big sharks in the Indian telecommunication sectors who are essentially rolling out their services to the entire nation. Where does India stand when it comes to operationalizing any domestic satellite internet services? Do you see any interest from these domestic players to launch their own satellite internet technologies? And how's government's reaction to that?
Yeah, India is definitely identified that we need our own satellite internet, and there has been some regulatory movement in approving, say, Starlink, OneWeb, and some of these existing satellite internet networks, and the local players as well, like Jio. They have expressed their interest to do this, and their approval processes are also underway. But the thing is, no one has gotten a full clearance yet that they are already operational over India. they're all like Amazon, Starlink, they're all waiting approval. And it's said there is no clear timelines, but it is supposed to happen in the coming months. But because that there is a lack of this immediate clearance, the issue is that these technologies are, since they are so global, they are, it's coming in from the satellite beams are coming in from space, basically, that it's very easy for these technologies to ignore borders. And it's not that they do it intentionally, it's that how do you even visualize borders when you're talking about a space technology? And because of this, there have been reports that SpaceX has been using their, like there are customers who go to Malaysia or Singapore and they buy Starlink devices there. And these kits are later, taken to Myanmar, where Starlink is technically not operational, but it still works. And so there is a lot of people in Myanmar are actually using Starlink for their internet needs. And because the internet has been cut off, they're using this, as a way to stay online and just circumvent all of the internet shutdowns. And the after effects and offshoots of this is that India has seen some of these Starlink kits cropping up in its territory, in Manipur, like you mentioned, and off the coast of Andaman. And the reports say that security forces have confirmed that some of these Starlink devices, especially near the border, they work over India. And so you have this weird scenario where these, militant groups, terror groups, and all the other negative non-state actors are somehow able to access internet, while legitimate forces of the Indian security forces and the army and all of these people who are operating in the same areas as well, in the border, in the remote regions, don't have access to internet just because of how remote these regions are, and because India has not cleared the satellite internet approvals yet, they can't use satellite internet either. So you have this weird asymmetry because of this scenario that India is in, and this is weird middle ground. So it would really benefit India if we somehow operationalize some of these satellite internet operators so that we even out this equation.
Right. My next question would have been on the security concerns revolving around the entire satellite internet technology business. But I think we pretty much covered it, right? We have the external issues with Myanmar, where insurgents at Manipur have been using this technology. This can be used in Jammu and Kashmir. So a lot of stuff have been used in drug business in the Andaman coast. What is the solution to this, Ashwin? I understand we can regulate our own domestic industries if and when they launch their own internet technologies. But how do we keep a leash on these foreign internet satellite technologies? Is there any way to regulate these folks?
So one thing we can do is that the risk with allowing Starlink to operate is that they will gain a near monopoly right away, because they have the incumbent advantage of having 6,800 satellites already, and they're on route to put more up there. So, but the cost benefit equations favor India getting some internet already here, because even China is launching two of its own satellite internet mega constellations, and that is going to start becoming another consideration very soon. So at this light, I think it's worth it for India to go ahead and operationalize some of these, and it can, give it to multiple vendors. Like there can be Starlink, there can be Amazon, there can be OneWeb, and OneWeb even has some part of it is under Indian ownership. So that is there to elevate some of the concerns. And so so at least this makes satellite internet active over India. In the long term, India should try and encourage its local industries in setting this up, so that they can incentivize this by putting out contracts, long-term contracts with objectives, where if Indian private players, like maybe it can be an industry consortia also, they all come together and they start operationalizing India's own satellite internet, then the government can act as an anchor customer and say, we're going to buy this much of your services for sure. And that drives the demand, that will drive funding, that will drive all the efforts to make this possible. And if we have two or three or more of our own local players in the long term, that's not going to happen in the next year or two, but in the next 5-10 years, if we start having constellations of our own from India, then these businesses can cater to government's needs, the security needs, and it can also cater to places like remote regions in the Western Ghats or the Aravalis or Himachal or Uttarakhand, where in places where there's no border concerns, there are plenty of customers themselves who would be interested in availing these technologies for their own use, and so it becomes a sustainable business model. So at least in the next 10 years, India can create such a policy ecosystem where it can, have multiple satellite internet providers, and that can serve as a redundancy and also a great way to keep the market competitive, prevent market concentration, and other failures. And I think that's the low-hanging fruit, and that's the only way we're going to get to this point is that if we start now. We cannot delay this process. We start today, we start to create the incentives today, then we're going to see some results in the next 10, 15 years. So I think that's what India should do.
Right. Thanks so much, Ashwin, for sharing your insights. Thanks a lot for taking time to be here with us. And to our listeners, if you're interested to know more about this issue, Ashwin and I have written a piece, and we'll attach the link in the description below. You can go ahead and read the piece. And thank you so much for tuning in, and see you all in the next episode of All Things Policy.
Thanks, Rakshit. Always fun to chat.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.